Andre had worked his entire adult life for this moment. Standing in front of his new home, keys in hand, he couldn't help but smile. The two-story colonial with its fresh blue paint and white trim sat on a quiet street in Oakwood Estates, a neighborhood he'd driven through countless times, dreaming of one day calling it home. "All mine," he whispered, walking up the concrete path to his front door. The April air carried the scent of freshly cut grass and blooming flowers. After 6 years of working overtime at his software engineering job and saving every penny, Andre had finally done it. At 34, he was a homeowner. The house had everything he wanted: 3 bedrooms, a finished basement, and a wide driveway that could easily fit 2 cars. His mom had already called dibs on one of the spare rooms for when she visited from out of state. The thought made him smile even wider. The first few months in the new house were everything Andre had hoped for. He settled into a comfortable routine, met a few of his neighbors, and even joined the neighborhood's online message board. Most people were friendly, waving as they walked their dogs or collected their mail. He felt at home. Until that Tuesday afternoon in July, Andre pulled onto his street after a long day at work, his mind already on the leftover lasagna waiting in his fridge. As his house came into view, he frowned. A silver SUV was parked in his driveway right where he usually left his car. "What the?" he muttered, slowing down. He didn't recognize the vehicle. None of his friends had mentioned stopping by, and he certainly wasn't expecting any deliveries. Andre parked on the street and walked toward his house, keys jangling in his hand. Maybe someone had pulled in to take a phone call or check directions and would be leaving soon. He decided to wait in his car for a few minutes to see if the driver returned. 10 minutes passed. Then 15. Andre checked his watch and sighed. He needed to get inside, change out of his work clothes, and start dinner. The mystery driver was nowhere to be seen. He got out of his car and approached the SUV, peering through the windows. Designer sunglasses on the dashboard, a coffee cup in the holder, a yoga mat in the back seat, but no driver. Andre took out his phone and snapped a few pictures of the SUV, making sure to get the license plate. Then he decided to ask around. Maybe one of his neighbors would know who it belonged to. He knocked on the door of the house to his right, but no one answered. At the house on his left, an older man opened the door. "Hey there," Andre said with a friendly smile. "I'm Andre from next door. I was wondering if you know whose SUV is parked in my driveway." The man shook his head. "No idea. Have you tried the house across the street? That woman's always having people over." Andre thanked him and tried the house across from his. A teenage boy answered and shrugged when asked about the car. 2 more houses and still no answers. The 5th house he tried had a neatly trimmed lawn with garden gnomes lined up along the path. The mailbox read Hoffman. Andre rang the doorbell and waited. The door swung open to reveal a woman in her early 50s with highlighted blonde hair cut in an angled bob. She wore white capri pants and a pink polo shirt with the Oakwood Estates logo embroidered on the chest. "Yes?" she said, barely hiding her annoyance at being disturbed. Her eyes traveled up and down, taking in Andre's appearance with a slight frown. "Hi, I'm Andre Wilson. I moved into 347 about 3 months ago." He pointed to his house across the street. "There's a silver SUV parked in my driveway, and I was wondering if it might belong to you or one of your guests." The woman's expression shifted from annoyance to something Andre couldn't quite place. Her lips formed a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, that's my car," she said casually, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. "I'm Barbara Hoffman. I'm on the HOA board." She said the last part like it was supposed to mean something to Andre, like it gave her special privileges. "Nice to meet you," Andre said, maintaining his politeness despite his growing frustration. "I was wondering if you could move your car. I'd like to park in my own driveway." Barbara waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, I won't be long. I'm just visiting Betty next door to your house. The old owners never minded when I used their driveway. It's closer to Betty's than mine, you see." Andre took a deep breath. "Well, I do mind. It's my property, and I'd appreciate it if you'd move your car now and use the visitor parking or your own driveway in the future." Barbara's smile vanished. She stared at Andre for a long moment, her eyes narrowing slightly. "Fine," she said finally. "Let me get my purse." She disappeared inside, leaving Andre standing on her doorstep. 5 minutes later, she emerged with a large designer handbag slung over her shoulder. She walked past him without a word, her heels clicking on the pavement. Andre followed at a distance. watching as she got into her SUV and backed out of his driveway with more speed than necessary. As she drove away, she didn't look in his direction or acknowledge him with a wave. Finally able to park in his own driveway, Andre felt a mix of relief and unease. Something told him this wouldn't be the last time he'd have an issue with Barbara Hoffman. That night, after heating up his lasagna and settling in front of the TV, Andre couldn't stop thinking about the encounter. He'd been polite but firm. He hadn't raised his voice or been unreasonable. All he'd done was ask someone to respect his property. So why did he feel like he'd done something wrong? His phone buzzed with a text from his best friend, Carlos. "How's life in the fancy neighborhood?" Carlos had texted. Andre thought for a moment before responding. "Interesting. Met one of my neighbors today. She's on the HOA board and apparently thinks my driveway is public parking." Carlos replied almost immediately. "Uh-oh, sounds like you've met a Karen in the wild." Andre chuckled despite himself. "Her name's actually Barbara." "Same difference," Carlos texted back. "Watch out for those HOA types. They love their power trips." Andre put his phone down and took another bite of lasagna. Maybe Carlos was right. Maybe Barbara was just one of those people who thought the rules didn't apply to her. But a small voice in the back of his mind wondered if there was something else at play. The next morning, Andre left for work earlier than usual. He had a meeting at 8:30 and wanted to grab coffee on the way. As he backed out of his driveway, he noticed Barbara standing at her mailbox. He raised his hand in a neighborly wave, deciding to give her the benefit of the doubt. Barbara looked directly at him but didn't wave back. Instead, she turned and walked back to her house, her back stiff. "Okay then," Andre muttered to himself. "That's how it's going to be." He tried to put the incident out of his mind as he drove to work. He had more important things to focus on, like the software project his team was launching next month and the housewarming party he was planning for the weekend. But as he sipped his coffee in the office parking lot, he couldn't shake the feeling that his interaction with Barbara was just the beginning of something. What that something was, he wasn't sure yet. What Andre didn't know then was that his simple request for Barbara to move her car from his driveway would spiral into a neighborhood drama that would test his patience, challenge his resolve, and ultimately reveal the true character of the people around him. And it would all start with a silver SUV parked where it didn't belong. Andre's housewarming party that weekend was a hit. His mom flew in from Atlanta, his sister drove up from Richmond with her kids, and a dozen friends from work and college showed up with food, drinks, and housewarming gifts. For a few days, the weird encounter with Barbara faded to the back of his mind. By Sunday evening, as he hugged his mom goodbye at the airport, life felt good. He had a beautiful home, supportive family, and great friends. What more could a man ask for? The answer came on Tuesday, just 8 days after the first incident. Andre pulled into his street after work and felt his stomach drop. The silver SUV was back, parked in his driveway as if it belonged there. "You've got to be kidding me," he muttered, parking on the street again. This time he didn't bother checking with other neighbors. He walked straight to Barbara's house and rang the doorbell. He could hear a TV playing inside, but no one came to the door. He rang again, waiting a full minute before giving up. As he turned to leave, he noticed Barbara peering through her living room curtains. Their eyes met briefly before she let the curtain fall back into place. Andre walked back to his house, his frustration growing with each step. He pulled out his phone and took more pictures of the SUV in his driveway, making sure to capture the time and date. He decided to wait inside. Surely Barbara would need her car soon. 2 hours later, just as Andre was heating up dinner, he heard a car engine start outside. He rushed to his front window just in time to see Barbara backing out of his driveway. She didn't look toward his house as she drove away. Andre shook his head in disbelief. He hadn't been home when she parked there, so she couldn't have asked permission. She had simply taken what wasn't hers to take, ignored his previous request, and now was avoiding him entirely. "This isn't right," he said to the empty room. That night, he drafted an email to the Oakwood Estates Homeowners Association. He explained the situation calmly and clearly, describing both incidents and attaching the photos he had taken. He asked if there was a policy about parking on other residents' property and requested that they speak to Barbara about respecting property boundaries. The response came the next morning from someone named Richard Thompson, the HOA president. "Dear Mr. Wilson, thank you for bringing this matter to our attention. I've spoken with Barbara Hoffman, who is actually our vice president here at the Oakwood Estates HOA. She describes this as a minor misunderstanding between neighbors. These things happen in close communities, and we encourage residents to work them out directly when possible. Barbara assures me this won't be a recurring issue. Best regards, Richard Thompson. Andre read the email twice, then set his phone down on the kitchen counter harder than necessary. A misunderstanding? There was nothing to misunderstand about. Please don't park in my driveway. He typed and deleted 3 different responses before deciding that a direct approach with Barbara might be better. He'd give her one more chance to respect his property rights before escalating further. But life had other plans. A crisis at work kept him late for the rest of the week, and his weekend was spent helping Carlos move to a new apartment. By the time Monday rolled around, the parking issue had once again been pushed to the background of his mind, until he got home that evening. The silver SUV sat in his driveway like an unwelcome guest that refused to leave. This time, Andre didn't even try to hide his anger as he marched across the street to Barbara's house. He rang the doorbell repeatedly until the door finally swung open. Barbara stood there in tennis clothes, a glass of white wine in her hand. "Oh," she said, her tone making it clear she wasn't happy to see him. "It's you." "Yes, it's me," Andre said, struggling to keep his voice level. "Your car's in my driveway again. This is the 3rd time, Barbara. I've asked you not to park there. The HOA said you assured them it wouldn't happen again." Barbara took a sip of her wine before responding. "My driveway is being resealed today. I couldn't park there." "Then park on the street or in the visitor lot," Andre said. "Not in my private driveway." "The street parking is so far from my house," she complained. "And I have tennis gear to carry." "Look, the old owners—" "I'm not the old owners," Andre cut in. "This is my house now, and that's my driveway. I've been very clear about this. Please move your car now and don't park there again." Barbara's face hardened. "You know, you're being very difficult. This is a friendly neighborhood where we help each other out." "Helping each other out requires asking first," Andre pointed out. "You never asked. You just took." Something flashed in Barbara's eyes, anger maybe, or something else. "Fine," she said coldly. "I'll move my car. But you might want to think about your attitude if you plan to fit in around here." She brushed past him, her shoulder nearly hitting his as she walked to her SUV. Andre watched as she backed out of his driveway with a screech of tires, driving away without another word. Later that night, Andre installed a doorbell camera he ordered online a few days earlier. It gave him a clear view of his driveway and front door. At least now he'd have video evidence if this happened again. And it did happen again, twice in the next week. The 4th time, Andre wasn't even home when Barbara parked in his driveway. His doorbell camera sent an alert to his phone, showing her pulling in around noon on a Saturday. He was at the gym and couldn't do anything about it right then. When he got home 2 hours later, the SUV was gone. But his camera had captured everything. Barbara parking, walking across to her friend Betty's house, and returning to her car 90 minutes later. The 5th time was the following Wednesday. Again, his camera alerted him while he was at work. This time, he decided to document everything more formally. He started a log with dates, ISO and screenshots from his camera footage. By key, the time incident number 6 rolled around, a Sunday morning when Andre was home and witnessed Barbara pull into his driveway. Without even glancing toward his house, he'd had enough. He called his cousin Tyler, who worked as a lawyer in a neighboring county. "She's trespassing," Tyler said after hearing the whole story. "Your driveway is your private property. You've asked her multiple times not to park there. The HOA has been notified. You've got documentation. You're well within your rights to have her car towed." "Towed?" Andre repeated. "Isn't that a bit extreme?" "Is it?" Tyler asked. "How many times have you asked her nicely? How many times has she ignored you? Some people only learn when there are consequences." Andre thought about it. He wasn't someone who liked confrontation or causing trouble. But this wasn't about being nice anymore. This was about standing up for himself and his property rights. "You're right," he said finally. "Can you recommend a towing company?" Tyler gave him the name of a reputable company that handled private property towing. Andre saved the number in his phone, hoping he wouldn't need to use it, but deep down he knew better. That evening, Andre sat on his front porch with a book, enjoying the warm summer air. Across the street, he could see Barbara hosting some kind of gathering. Cars lined the street in front of her house. He tensed up, watching as guest after guest arrived. Would she try to use his driveway again? His answer came 20 minutes later when a couple arrived in a red sedan and took what looked like the last available street parking spot near Barbara's house. Andre watched as Barbara came out to greet them, then glanced across at his empty driveway with a calculating look. Something inside Andre snapped. He stood up, ready to cross the street and confront her before she could even think about parking there again. But his phone rang, distracting him. It was his mom calling for their weekly Sunday chat. By the time he finished the call 40 minutes later, he went to check on his driveway. The silver SUV was there, parked right in the middle of his property. Andre looked across at Barbara's house, where music and laughter spilled out onto the street. She was using his property without permission, again, after multiple warnings, while hosting a party. His hand moved to his phone, fingers hovering over the towing company's number. This wasn't just about parking anymore. This was about respect, boundaries, and standing up for himself. Barbara had made her choice. Now it was time for Andre to make his. Andre stared at his phone, the towing company's number glowing on the screen. His thumb hovered over the call button. Was he overreacting? Would having Barbara's car towed make him the bad guy in the neighborhood? He walked to his front window and looked out at the silver SUV sitting in his driveway. No, he decided. He wasn't overreacting. He had been patient. He had asked nicely multiple times. He had gone through the proper channels with the HOA. Nothing had worked. Some people only understood consequences. Before he could second-guess himself, Andre pressed the call button. A gruff voice answered after 2 rings. Reliable Towing, how can I help you? Hi, Andre said, his mouth suddenly dry. I need to have a car towed from my private property. Address? Andre gave his address, then listened as the dispatcher explained what would happen next. They would send a driver out within the hour. Andre would need to show ID proving he lived at the address, plus documentation showing he had the right to have the vehicle removed. Do you have a no parking sign posted? The dispatcher asked. No, Andre admitted, but I've asked the owner multiple times not to park there. I have it documented. That works. But you might want to get a sign after this. Makes things easier next time. Next time. Andre hoped there wouldn't be a next time. After hanging up, Andre gathered his driver's license, a recent utility bill with his address, and printed copies of the email he'd sent to the HOA. He also pulled up the video footage from his doorbell camera on his phone, showing Barbara parking in his driveway earlier that evening without permission. As he waited for the tow truck, Andre felt a strange mix of emotions. Satisfaction that he was finally taking action, nervousness about the confrontation that might follow, disappointment that it had come to this. The tow truck arrived 45 minutes later, its yellow lights flashing as it pulled up in front of Andre's house. The driver, a heavyset man with a salt and pepper beard, introduced himself as Mike. That the vehicle? Mike asked, nodding toward Barbara's SUV. Yes, Andre said. The silver one. Mike examined Andre's documents and nodded. Looks in order to me. You've given the owner fair warning. Let's get this done. Andre watched as Mike positioned the tow truck and began the process of hooking up Barbara's SUV. The party at Barbara's house continued, music and laughter floating across the street. No one seemed to notice what was happening in Andre's driveway. Until they did. Andre was signing the final paperwork when he heard someone shouting. He looked up to see Barbara rushing across the street, her face red with anger. 2 other people, a man about her age and a younger woman, followed close behind. What do you think you're doing? Barbara demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. That's my car! Mike stepped between Barbara and Andre. Ma'am, your vehicle is being towed for unauthorized parking on private property. This is ridiculous. Barbara looked past Mike to glare at Andre. You could have just asked me to move it. Andre felt a flash of anger. I have asked you 6 times now. You keep doing it anyway. I was only going to be a few minutes. You've been parked there for almost an hour. Andre cut in. While you're hosting a party across the street. The man who had followed Barbara, her husband, Andre guessed, put a hand on her arm. Barb, come on. Let's just pay the fee and get the car back. But Barbara wasn't ready to back down. Do you know how much that's going to cost? At least $200? All because he... She jabbed a finger toward Andre. Couldn't be a good neighbor and share his driveway for one evening. It's not about sharing. Andre said, keeping his voice calm despite the scene unfolding in front of his house. It's about asking permission and respecting boundaries. You've never once asked if you could park here. You just do it, even after I've told you not to. By now, several party guests had wandered over to watch the drama. Andre felt uncomfortable with all the eyes on him, but he stood his ground. Mike finished securing the SUV to the tow truck. Ma'am, if you want your vehicle back, you'll need to come to our lot. Here's the address and the fee schedule. He handed Barbara a card, which she snatched from his hand. This isn't over, she hissed at Andre before turning to stomp back toward her house, her husband and the other woman hurrying after her. Mike gave Andre a sympathetic look. Not your first problem with that one, huh? Andre shook his head. Definitely not. Well, based on how mad she is, might be your last. Mike climbed into his truck. Good luck, buddy. As the tow truck pulled away with Barbara's SUV, Andre felt the eyes of the remaining onlookers. A couple of them were whispering to each other. Great, he thought. Now I'm the neighborhood villain. But then something unexpected happened. An older man Andre recognized from down the street approached him. About time someone stood up to her, the man said, offering his hand. I'm Frank, by the way. Live in the blue house on the corner. Andre shook his hand, surprised. Andre, nice to meet you. Barbara's been pulling stunts like this for years, Frank continued. Acts like she owns the place because she's on the board. Most of us are too tired to fight it anymore. Another neighbor, a woman walking her dog, stopped to add her 2 cents. She used to park in our driveway too until my husband threatened to have her towed. Hasn't done it since. Really? Andre was stunned. So he wasn't the only one. Oh yeah, the woman said. Ask around. Barbara's made enemies of half the neighborhood with her entitlement. By the time Andre went back inside, he felt a little better about his decision. Maybe he wasn't the bad guy after all. The next morning, Andre woke up early to put up a no unauthorized parking sign at the entrance to his driveway. As he was hammering it into place, he noticed Barbara's husband crossing the street toward him. Andre tensed, preparing for another confrontation. But the man's body language wasn't aggressive. Morning, the husband said, stopping a respectful distance away. I'm Paul Hoffman, Barbara's husband. Andre Wilson, Andre replied cautiously. Paul looked uncomfortable. Look, I wanted to apologize for last night, and for all the times Barbara has parked in your driveway. It cost us $275 to get the car back, and I've told her it's not worth the hassle to keep doing this. Andre was taken aback by the apology. I appreciate that. I really didn't want to have the car towed, but I felt like I was out of options. Paul nodded. I get it. Barbara can be stubborn. Once she decides something is a certain way, it's hard to change her mind. But I think the towing made an impression. It won't happen again. The two men shook hands and Paul walked back to his house. Andre finished installing his sign, feeling cautiously optimistic. Maybe the parking war was finally over. For 2 weeks there were no incidents. Barbara's silver SUV stayed firmly in her own driveway or on the street in front of her house. When they saw each other outside, she ignored him completely, turning her head away if their eyes happened to meet. Andre could live with that. Cold silence was better than finding her car in his driveway. At the next HOA meeting, which Andre decided to attend out of curiosity, Barbara sat at the front table with the other board members, never once looking in his direction. The parking issue wasn't mentioned, but Andre noticed a new item in the meeting minutes about respecting property boundaries. Small victory, he thought. Life settled into a peaceful routine. Summer turned to fall, and Andre began preparing his house for his first holiday season as a homeowner. He put up Halloween decorations and bought bags of candy for trick-or-treaters. He started planning the menu for Thanksgiving, when his family would visit again. Then, on a crisp Saturday in late October, just when Andre thought the whole parking saga was behind him, his doorbell camera sent an alert to his phone. He was at the hardware store picking up supplies to fix a leaky faucet. He checked the notification and froze in the middle of the plumbing aisle. The silver SUV was back, parked in his driveway once again. Andre stared at his phone in disbelief. After all that, the confrontations, the towing, the apology from Paul, Barbara was still parking in his driveway. Some people really don't learn, he thought, already heading for the checkout. But I know exactly what to do this time. Andre left his shopping cart in the middle of the hardware store aisle and hurried to his car. As he drove home, his mind raced. Why would Barbara park in his driveway again? After the towing incident, after her husband's apology, after 2 peaceful weeks, why start this up again? Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe she wasn't thinking. Maybe she was in a hurry and fell back into old habits. Or maybe, Andre thought as he turned onto his street, she was testing him, seeing if he would actually go through with having her car towed a second time. The silver SUV sat gleaming in his driveway, just as the camera alert had shown. Andre parked on the street and sat in his car for a moment, gathering his thoughts. Through his windshield, he could see his no unauthorized parking sign standing clear as day at the edge of his property. There was no way Barbara had missed it. This was deliberate. Andre pulled out his phone and brought up the towing company's number again. Then he hesitated. Should he try one more time to talk to her? Give her one last chance to move her car? He looked across at Barbara's house. Her front door opened and out came Barbara with Betty, the neighbor who lived next door to Andre. They were dressed in tennis clothes and carrying racket bags. They got into Betty's car and drove off, chatting and laughing, without so much as a glance toward Andre or the SUV parked in his driveway. That settled it. She knew exactly what she was doing. Andre made the call. The same dispatcher answered and he explained the situation. Same address, same vehicle, second offense. We'll send someone right out, the dispatcher said. Sounds like this person didn't learn their lesson the first time. Apparently not, Andre agreed. This time the tow truck arrived in just 30 minutes. It was a different driver, younger with a name tag that read Tony. Second time for this vehicle? Tony asked as Andre showed him the documentation. Yep, Andre said. Same car, same owner, same problem. Tony shook his head as he went about hooking up the SUV. Some people, man, they just don't get it. Tell me about it, Andre muttered. The operation went smoothly. Too smoothly. Part of Andre had expected Barbara to show up mid-tow again, creating another scene. But there was no sign of her or Paul. After the tow truck pulled away with Barbara's SUV, Andre went inside to put away his hardware store purchases. He had just finished fixing the leaky faucet when his doorbell rang. Here we go, he thought. But when he opened the door, it wasn't Barbara or Paul standing there. It was Richard Thompson, the HOA president. Mr. Wilson, Richard said stiffly. May I have a word? Andre stepped aside to let him in. Of course. Would you like something to drink? Water? Coffee? No, thank you, Richard said, remaining standing even after Andre gestured toward the couch. This won't take long. I've received a complaint from Barbara Hoffman about you having her car towed. Again. I did, Andre confirmed, because she parked in my driveway without permission. Again. Richard looked uncomfortable. Mrs. Hoffman is a valued member of our community and has served on the HOA board for 5 years. She feels you're being unnecessarily hostile. Andre took a deep breath. With all due respect, Mr. Thompson, I've asked Barbara multiple times not to park in my driveway. I've documented each incident. I've installed a security camera and a no unauthorized parking sign. I even sent an email to the HOA to you about this issue weeks ago. What would you suggest I do differently? Richard shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Well, in a community like ours, we try to be accommodating to our neighbors. I've been very accommodating, Andre cut in, for months. But my property rights matter too. Would you let someone repeatedly park in your driveway after you've asked them not to? Richard didn't answer the question directly. I understand your frustration, but having cars towed creates tension in the neighborhood. Perhaps we could work out a compromise. I'm not interested in a compromise that involves someone using my property without permission, Andre said firmly. Barbara has her own driveway. There's street parking. There's a visitor lot. She has options that don't involve trespassing on my property. The two men stared at each other for a long moment. Well, Richard said finally, I can see you're set on this course of action. I'll relay your position to Mrs. Hoffman. Please do, Andre said. And please remind her that if she parks in my driveway again, I will have her car towed again. After Richard left, Andre sat on his couch, feeling drained. He had hoped the parking issue was resolved, but clearly it was still very much alive, and now he was butting heads with the HOA president too. He called Carlos to vent. You did the right thing, Carlos assured him after hearing the story. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. This woman is clearly used to getting her way, and she's mad that you're standing up to her. Yeah, but now I've got the HOA president coming to my house like I'm the problem, Andre said. What if they try to fine me or something? For what? Carlos asked. Protecting your property? They can't do that. And if they try, I've got a cousin who's a real estate lawyer. She'd love to take that case. Andre smiled for the first time that day. Thanks, man. I appreciate the backup. Anytime. So what happens next? I guess we wait and see if Barbara tries it again, Andre said. But honestly, I'm tired of this whole thing. I just want to live in my house and not worry about finding someone parked in my driveway when I get home. Later that evening, Andre's doorbell rang again. This time it was Paul Hoffman, looking even more uncomfortable than he had during their last conversation. Andre, he began, I want to apologize. Let me guess, Andre interrupted. For Barbara parking in my driveway again? Paul nodded miserably. Yes, I don't know what she was thinking. I really thought we were past this after last time. So did I, Andre said. We had to pay another $275 to get the car back, Paul continued, plus a $50 fee since it's the second tow from the same address within 30 days. He ran a hand through his thinning hair. I've told Barbara that if it happens again, she'll be paying the fees herself. Andre wasn't sure what to say. He felt bad for Paul, who seemed genuinely embarrassed by his wife's behavior. But at the same time, this wasn't his problem to solve. I appreciate the apology, Andre said finally, but you understand that I can't just let this slide, right? It's my property. I know, Paul said. You have every right to have the car towed. He trailed off looking defeated. I'll talk to her again. Make her understand that this has to stop. After Paul left, Andre wondered if anything would actually change. Barbara had ignored her husband's first attempt to rein her in. Would this time be any different? His answer came 3 days later when he received an email from the HOA. Dear Oakwood Estates residents, it has come to our attention that there have been some misunderstandings regarding parking rules in our community. We would like to remind everyone that private driveways are the property of the homeowner and should not be used without express permission to visitor. Parking spaces are available throughout the community for guests. Street parking is permitted where not otherwise marked. Unauthorized vehicles may be towed at the owner's expense. We pride ourselves on being a friendly, cooperative community, but we must also respect each other's property rights. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Sincerely, the Oakwood Estates HOA Board. Andre read the email twice, a slow smile spreading across his face. It wasn't a personal apology from Barbara, but it was a public acknowledgement that he was in the right. The HOA was officially on his side whether Barbara liked it or not. He printed out the email and taped it next to his no unauthorized parking sign. Just in case. For the next 2 weeks, there were no incidents. Barbara's silver SUV stayed far away from Andre's driveway. When they passed each other on the street, she would turn her head away dramatically, as if she couldn't bear to look at him. Andre didn't mind. Cold shoulders were better than car troubles any day. Then came the first weekend in November. Andre had invited his family over for an early Thanksgiving celebration, since his sister couldn't make it on the actual holiday. His mom, his sister, his 2 nieces, and his brother-in-law were all coming, plus Carlos and a few other friends. He spent Friday cleaning the house and Saturday morning shopping for food. By noon, he was back home, marinating the turkey and prepping side dishes. His guests would start arriving around 4. At 3:30, as Andre was showering and getting dressed, his phone chimed with a doorbell camera alert. He grabbed his phone, water still dripping from his hair, and checked the notification. The silver SUV was in his driveway. Again. You have got to be kidding me, Andre said aloud, staring at the screen. Today? She picks today? He quickly threw on clothes and went outside. Barbara was nowhere to be seen, probably already at Betty's house or wherever she was going. Andre looked at his watch. His mom's flight was landing in 30 minutes. His other guests would be arriving soon after. If he called the tow truck now, there would be a scene right in the middle of his family gathering. The last thing he wanted was for his holiday celebration to be overshadowed by neighborhood drama. But if he didn't call, Barbara would think she had won. That she could park in his driveway whenever she wanted with no consequences. Andre stared at the silver SUV, a symbol of months of frustration and disrespect, and made his decision. He pulled out his phone and dialed the now familiar number of Reliable Towing. The towing dispatcher recognized Andre's voice by now. Same address, same vehicle? She asked. Yes, Andre confirmed. Third time. We'll send someone right away, she said. Repeat customers get priority. Andre thanked her and hung up. He went back inside to finish getting ready, trying not to let the situation ruin his mood. Today was about family and friends, not about his ongoing battle with Barbara. His phone rang. His mom calling to let him know her plane had landed and she was getting a rideshare to his house. Can't wait to see you, baby, she said. And that beautiful house of yours again. Can't wait to see you too, Mom. Andre replied, not mentioning the silver SUV currently blocking his driveway. That was the last thing he wanted her to worry about. 20 minutes later, the tow truck arrived. Andre went outside to meet the driver. It was Mike again, the one who had handled the first towing. Back for round 3, huh? Mike said, glancing at the SUV. This lady doesn't give up easy. Apparently not, Andre sighed. As Mike began hooking up the SUV, a car pulled up across the street at Barbara's house. Paul got out, saw what was happening, and hurried over. Andre, please, he said, looking distressed. Not again. I warned you both, Andre said. I told you I'd have it towed if she parked here again. She chose to ignore that warning. Again. Paul ran a hand over his face. I know. But it's getting expensive and That's not my problem, Andre cut in. This is my property. I've been more than clear about this. I've been patient. I've gone through the proper channels. What else am I supposed to do? Before Paul could answer, another car pulled up, Andre's mom in her rideshare. She got out, looking confused at the scene in her son's driveway. Andre? She called. What's going on? Andre went to hug his mom, then quickly explained the situation. She listened, her expression growing increasingly disapproving as he outlined the months-long parking battle. So this woman just keeps parking in your driveway after you've told her not to? She asked, loud enough for Paul to hear. Multiple times? Yes, Andre said. This is the third time I've had to have her car towed. His mom shook her head, then turned to Paul. Sir, your wife needs to learn some respect. My son worked hard for this house and this driveway. It belongs to him, not to her. Paul looked even more uncomfortable. I understand. I'm very sorry about all this. Mike finished securing the SUV to the tow truck. All set, he said to Andre. Want me to take it away now? Andre nodded, but before Mike could get back in his truck, another car pulled up. Barbara got out of Betty's car, took one look at her SUV on the tow truck, and exploded. Again? She shrieked, storming toward them. Are you kidding me? Andre stepped in front of his mom protectively. Barbara, we've been through this. You can't park in my driveway. You know that. I've told you repeatedly. Your husband has told you. The HOA has reminded everyone about the parking rules. Yet here we are again. It's just a driveway. Barbara snapped. What's the big deal? I was only going to be gone an hour. The big deal, Andre's mom interjected, is that it's not your driveway. It's my son's, and you don't have permission to use it. Barbara looked at Andre's mom with surprise, as if just noticing her presence. And who are you? I'm Andre's mother, she said, drawing herself up to her full height. And I raised him to stand up for himself when people try to take advantage of him. Barbara turned to her husband. Paul, are you just going to stand there and let them talk to me like this? Do something. Paul looked trapped. What do you want me to do, Barb? You parked in his driveway after multiple warnings, after 2 tows, after I specifically asked you not to. What did you expect would happen? I expected some basic neighborly courtesy, Barbara snapped. Courtesy goes both ways, Andre pointed out. You've shown none by repeatedly using my property without permission. More cars were pulling up. Andre's sister and her family, then Carlos. The quiet street was becoming quite busy. People were watching from their front yards and windows. Barbara noticed the audience and seemed to realize she was making a scene. She lowered her voice but kept her angry tone. Fine, she hissed. Take the car. But this isn't over. Actually, Andre said, his patience finally gone, it is over. Let me be crystal clear. If your car shows up in my driveway again, I will have it towed immediately. No warnings, no discussions, and I'll start filing trespassing reports with the police. Do you understand? Are you threatening me? Barbara asked, eyes wide. No, Andre said calmly. I'm setting a boundary and telling you the consequences if you cross it. Again. Mike, who had been standing by his tow truck watching the drama unfold, cleared his throat. So, am I taking this car or what? Andre nodded. Yes, please. Wait, Paul said suddenly. He turned to his wife. Barbara, this has gone far enough. You're going to pay the towing fee this time, all of it. I told you what would happen if you parked there again. Barbara stared at her husband in shock. Paul! No, Barb, I'm serious. This is embarrassing and expensive. It needs to stop. He turned to Andre. I apologize again for this situation. It won't happen anymore. I promise. As Mike drove away with the SUV, Barbara stood silently fuming. After a moment, she turned and stalked back to Betty's house without another word. Paul nodded awkwardly at Andre and his growing group of guests, then followed his wife. Well, Carlos said, breaking the tension, that was quite the welcome party. Andre's nieces giggled and suddenly everyone was laughing, the stress of the confrontation breaking like a fever. Come on inside. Everyone, Andre said, leading his family and friends into his house. Let's not let this ruin our day. And they didn't. The early Thanksgiving celebration went on as planned, with good food, better company, and no more interruptions from across the street. Andre's mom regaled everyone with stories from his childhood. His nieces played video games on his TV, and Carlos kept everyone laughing with his jokes. By the end of the night, the parking drama felt distant and unimportant. The next morning, as Andre's family prepared to leave, his mom pulled him aside. I'm proud of you, she said, patting his cheek. You stood your ground without losing your temper. That's not easy to do when someone keeps pushing your buttons. Thanks, Mom, Andre said, hugging her. I learned from the best. After everyone had gone, Andre sat on his front porch with a cup of coffee, enjoying the quiet Sunday morning. Across the street, he saw Paul outside washing his car, not the silver SUV, but his own sedan. They nodded to each other, a silent acknowledgement. Later that afternoon, Andre's doorbell rang. He opened it to find Richard, the HOA president, standing there with an official-looking envelope. Mr. Wilson, Richard said, his tone more respectful than during their last encounter. I wanted to deliver this personally. Andre took the envelope, opened it, and found a letter from the HOA board. Dear Mr. Wilson, after reviewing recent events and the ongoing parking dispute with Mrs. Hoffman, the board has determined that your actions were justified and within your rights as a homeowner. Mrs. Hoffman has been formally reprimanded for her repeated violations of community parking rules and has been removed from her position on the board pending completion of a community standards refresher course. We apologize for any inconvenience this situation has caused you and thank you for your patience. Sincerely, the Oakwood Estates HOA board. Andre looked up from the letter in surprise. She's been removed from the board? Richard nodded. Several other residents came forward after yesterday's incident with their own stories about Barbara overstepping boundaries. The board voted unanimously this morning. I wasn't trying to get her kicked off the board, Andre said. I just wanted her to stop parking in my driveway. I understand, Richard said. But this was about more than just parking. It was about accountability. No one is above the rules, not even board members. Especially not board members. After Richard left, Andre reread the letter. He felt no joy in Barbara's removal from the board, just relief that the situation had finally been resolved. The silver SUV never appeared in Andre's driveway again. Barbara avoided him completely, crossing the street if they happened to be walking on the same sidewalk. Paul would wave politely when they saw each other, a gesture Andre always returned. 6 months later, a for sale sign appeared in front of the Hoffman's house. Within weeks they had moved out, replaced by a young couple with a toddler and a dog. Andre brought them cookies as a welcome gift and made sure to mention the ample visitor parking spaces available throughout the neighborhood. His first year in Oakwood Estates hadn't gone exactly as planned, but as Andre sat on his front porch on the anniversary of his move-in day, he felt at peace. He had stood his ground, maintained his boundaries, and come out stronger for it, and his driveway remained blissfully free of silver SUVs.